Okay, I think we're good to get started. It's 6 o'clock, and welcome everybody joining us for tonight's Ask an Expert. It's the first one of 2023. Welcome back. If you've joined us before, if you're new to these discussions, we're excited to have you. We're excited to have everybody, and we appreciate your time and your willingness to want to learn more about public health and safety, mental health, substance use, all of the topics that we touch on through this lecture series. My name is Amanda Wroblewski. I am the program coordinator for the Pillar program at Boulder Community Health. If you're not familiar with us, we are a program embedded in the healthcare system that helps folks navigate and get connected to treatment for substance use disorders and or the management of chronic pain without the use of narcotics. Check us out, bch.org/pillar, PILLAR, to learn more or get in contact if you want to chat directly. So as I mentioned, we're here tonight for our series, Ask an Expert, and our expert joining us this evening is Ivani Dilger, and she has all kinds of experience and credentials. I'll let her introduce herself in just a minute, but she's going to answer the question on how we turn anxiety into our superpower. The lecture is going to be about 45 or so minutes, and it's live and interactive. So please feel free to enter any questions or thoughts that you want to chat through during the discussion in the chat box on your screen. We will try to get to everything, and otherwise, like I said, you can find my contact info on the Pillar website, and we can certainly follow up. Because you all are here spending your time, and I know time is precious and valuable, I want to be transparent with you and manage the expectations for the evening. So as I mentioned, the topics we discuss here generally aren't light. They do have to do with mental illness, stigma, substance use disorders, trauma, and what we talk about in these spaces aren't meant to just wave a magic wand and be solutions, but more to inspire hope and let folks know about what resources are out there, about the amazing and compassionate network of professionals and peers and community members who are here supporting the work that gets done day in and day out, and hopefully be a step towards a path of recovery if that's what folks are looking for. So again, we appreciate your time. We want to talk with you. Please enter questions into the chat. I will be the disembodied voice throughout the evening, monitoring the discussion and facilitating. But otherwise, I am going to turn it over to Ivani in just a second and some fabulous volunteers from her program, Natural Highs, and give you all a really comprehensive look at how to turn anxiety into your superpower. Thank you.
Welcome, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us. We're just here to help introduce Natural Highs. So my name is Kara. My pronouns are she, her. I've been with Natural Highs for about 4 years. And what is Natural Highs? So Natural Highs is a nonprofit here in Boulder, Colorado, that's been serving youth and adults for over 16 years. And our passion really lies around helping bring destigmatized, shame-free substance abuse education to young folks as well as adults, but we really, really love working with youth. And we do this through teaching about herbs, through teaching about brain chemistry, through having open dialogue about mental health, where people can really feel free to come and ask questions that might seem so simple, but it's really a radical act right now, especially for young ones who are struggling. I found natural highs in my early 20s after I'd been struggling since I was a young teen, and it really, really saved my life. I'm so grateful for this organization. We run weekly drop-in classes for youth at Made Life from 4:30 to 6:30 every week. So youth under 18 are always welcome to come to that, as well as we have bilingual monthly workshops that are online in English and Spanish, and you can get notified for that through signing up on our website.
Yeah, so I'm Alex. I'm a practicum student at Natural Highs, and kind of just piggybacking off of what Kara brought in, we focus a lot about on neuroscience behind addiction, and yeah, just destigmatizing addiction, helping people take back control into their own lives, and yeah, for people to really understand what's happening within their bodies, and helping the community understand that neuroscience is something that is so interrelated to the herbs that we're able to put in our bodies that can mimic certain substances to let us naturally create these feelings and feel naturally high. Yeah, so it's a great program, and I'm also very thankful to have met best friends and Avani, and it's great. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Jennifer. We also provide free AccuDetox throughout the community, multiple days of the week. It has multiple benefits that help with anxiety, stress, and it helps destigmatize the way around addictions and mental illness. Yes, AccuDetox is a 5-point needle protocol in the ears, and it can help release blockages in your meridians inside of your body.
So I'm so glad that you all introduced Natural Highs. We are a nonprofit, and so it's very important to us to educate as many people as possible in the community about mental health issues and about substances and about healthy alternatives. So you're going to learn a lot about this tonight. We started this initiative, Turn Anxiety into Your Superpower, because we saw that now stress and anxiety and depression are really, they have become an epidemic, not just for young people, but really for people all ages. And so we learned that teaching the neuroscience of stress, anxiety, and trauma to people all ages is incredibly empowering. And so that's why we're here tonight. So, welcome again. We're so happy you're here because oftentimes, right now, a lot of people are struggling with stress, anxiety, and depression. And, you know, a lot of people think that there's something wrong with them, that they have a disorder. And the way I like to start out, I would, if we would be all together in a room, I would ask you, I would ask everybody, raise your hand if you have experienced anxiety. And I can guarantee you most people's hands would go up. And the next thing I say, okay, look around. Did you know that? Did you know that that many people are struggling with anxiety right now? And most people would say, no, I did not know that. Because typically we don't walk around saying, guess what? I have anxiety. There's still so much stigma and shame around that, and people think that it is a weakness or potentially something that is wrong with them. What most people don't know is that anxiety is actually a sign of the freeze response that your brain, that your nervous system can kick into when you are in a situation of overwhelming stress. So tonight we want to show you the neuroscience behind stress, anxiety, and trauma, and really how to work with that. We know at this point not everybody can afford to go to a therapist, can afford to get professional treatment. And so we, as a nonprofit, we want to empower people to learn a lot of tools that they can help themselves with and that they can help their family with. And obviously, there are situations where professional help is really helpful. But there's so many tools and so much knowledge now available in neuroscience that unfortunately not everybody has access to. And I started Natural Highs as a nonprofit really with the mission to make this knowledge available to everybody, specifically people who are young, but really people all ages. So what we want to do tonight, I want to show you, I want to start with the research on stress and anxiety, because I want you to know that this is not something we invented, and this is not a Boulder thing. Everything we're going to do tonight is actually based on research and neuroscience. And so you're going to learn about the nervous system issues that are really part of stress and anxiety. So throughout the night, you're going to hear me use these terms, stress, anxiety, and trauma. And so I want to explain to you that the process that happens with stress, with anxiety, and with trauma in the brain and in the nervous system is actually the same. It's just a difference in severity on a spectrum. So imagine you have here on the milder side of the spectrum, you have the experience with stress. In the medium kind of part of the spectrum, you have the experience with anxiety. And then in the more severe end of the spectrum, you have the experience with trauma and what we call PTSD. Now, a lot of people, when we teach this neuroscience and the techniques that we want to show you tonight, a lot of people think, well, this couldn't work when the situation is very extreme. I work as a trauma therapist here in the community, and I work with people who are probably on the most severe end of the spectrum with mental health symptoms and trauma symptoms and substance use issues. And I have to tell you, I would teach them exactly the same material. So it applies really to the whole spectrum. And you are invited tonight to really listen to all these different pieces to wherever you are most interested in on that spectrum, right? So if you're mostly interested how to deal with stress, you can listen it with that ear. If you're interested in how to deal with anxiety, you can listen, everything applies to that. If you are really interested in how this applies to trauma, you can also listen on that end of the spectrum. So you're welcome to pick and choose for yourself. So after we show you what happens in the nervous system, we will show you techniques that we have developed to really empower young people and parents and people all ages to work with their own anxiety. And you're going to see in the course of our presentation here that anxiety is not the problem. You're going to hopefully fall in love with anxiety, because the fact that we're calling this anxiety, turn anxiety into your superpower, it's not a joke. We want you to turn this into your superpower, and we will show you how. So we will teach you the techniques that hopefully in a very practical sense you can take with you. And you are welcome to teach these techniques to everybody in your life, to your kids, to your family, to your friends. We want that, okay? And then at the end, we will tell you about a lot of resources that are available in our community and that you can access. Awesome. So if you would be here, I would be very curious what burning questions you have around anxiety. So feel free to put them in the chat, and I know that Amanda will speak up for you. So if you have burning questions for yourself or for somebody in your family, feel free to put them in the chat, okay? Also, if you have specific questions around anxiety.
Yeah, so we'll just give folks a minute here. you have any
And while we're
questions.
waiting for questions, I would actually like for you to rate your own experience with stress or anxiety. So imagine that you would have a scale. You would have a scale, and the scale goes from -5 to +5. And this is not to rate the experience of severity with anxiety or stress, but how much you like it or how much you hate it. Okay? So if you hate your experience with anxiety, you can pick a -5 or a -4 or whatever number fits to you for you on the scale. Or if you really like your experience with stress or anxiety, you can pick a plus number. Okay? You never have to say this number out loud. This is just for you. So pick for yourself a number, how much you like or how much you hate your experience with stress and anxiety. Because my ambition tonight is to change your number, to move it upward. Okay? So let's see if we can do that.
So we've got one question so far, Avani. In what ways is depression related to anxiety?
Have you ever wondered why everybody who has anxiety, or most people, also have depression? Have you ever wondered why everybody says, oh yeah, I deal with anxiety and depression? You will learn tonight how they are related and why they often come together. Yeah, it's a fabulous question.
That's the only one we've got so far.
That's totally fine. And I just want to invite, right? We're here for you. So any question is always fine. Just put it in the comments and Amanda will speak up for you.
Yeah, no silly questions. You're all also anonymous. So
Totally.
nobody
great.
knows who's asking these.
Okay, so let's dive in. I'd like to start with the research, and I would like to show you a part of a TED Talk called How to Make Stress Your Friend by Kelly McGonigal. Now, every time Kelly McGonigal names the word stress, you can also fill in anxiety. And you're going to see afterwards how they're connected. So again, right, where stress would be the milder version, anxiety would feel more intense. But every time she talks about stress, you can think for yourself, okay, this applies also for anxiety. So we're only going to watch a part of the TED Talk. Just for time's sake, but we want you to watch it and really wonder what does that mean for my life? How would I apply this in my life? Okay?
I have a confession to make. But first, I want you to make a little confession to me. In the past year, I want you to just raise your hand if you've experienced relatively little stress. Anyone? Mm-hmm. How about a moderate amount of stress? Who's experienced a lot of stress? Yeah, me too. But that is not my confession. My confession is this. I'm a health psychologist, and my mission is to help people be happier and healthier. But I fear that something I've been teaching for the last 10 years is doing more harm than good, and it has to do with stress. For years, I've been telling people stress makes you sick. It increases the risk of everything from the common cold to cardiovascular disease. Basically, I've turned stress into the enemy. But I've changed my mind about stress, and today, I want to change yours. Let me start with the study that made me rethink my whole approach to stress. This study tracked 30,000 adults in the United States for 8 years, and they started by asking people, how much stress have you experienced in the last year? They also asked, do you believe that stress is harmful for your health? And then they used public death records to find out who died. Okay. some bad news first. People who experienced a lot of stress in the previous year had a 43% increased risk of dying. But that was only true for the people who also believed that stress is harmful for your health. People who experienced a lot of stress but did not view stress as harmful were no more likely to die. In fact, they had the lowest risk of dying of anyone in the study, including people who had relatively little stress. Now, the researchers estimated that over the 8 years they were tracking deaths, 182,000 Americans died prematurely, not from stress, but from the belief that stress is bad for you. That is over 20,000 deaths a year. Now, if that estimate is correct, that would make believing stress is bad for you the 15th largest cause of death in the United States last year, killing more people than skin cancer, HIV, AIDS, and homicide. You can see why this study freaked me out. Here I've been spending so much energy telling people stress is bad for your health. So this study got me wondering, can changing how you think about stress make you healthier? And here the science says yes. When you change your mind about stress, you can change your body's response to stress. Now, to explain how this works, I want you all to pretend that you are participants in a study designed to stress you out. It's called the social stress test. You come into the laboratory, and you're told you have to give a 5-minute impromptu speech on your personal weaknesses to a panel of expert evaluators sitting right in front of you. And to make sure you feel the pressure, there are bright lights and a camera in your face, kind of like this. And the evaluators have been trained to give you discouraging nonverbal feedback, like this. Now that you're sufficiently demoralized, time for part 2, a math test. And unbeknownst to you, the experimenter has been trained to harass you during it. Now, we're gonna all do this together. It's gonna be fun, for me. Okay. I want you all to count backwards from 996 in increments of 7. You're gonna do this out loud as fast as you can, starting with 996. Go. Go faster. Faster, please. You're going too slow. Stop, 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 stop. That guy made a mistake. We're gonna have to start all over again. You're not very good at this, are you? Okay, so you get the idea. Now, if you were actually in this study, you'd probably be a little stressed out. Your heart might be pounding, you might be breathing faster, maybe breaking out into a sweat. And normally, we interpret these physical changes as anxiety or signs that we aren't coping very well with the pressure. But what if you viewed them instead as signs that your body was energized, was preparing you to meet this challenge? Now, that is exactly what participants were told in a study conducted at Harvard University. Before they went through the social stress test, they were taught to rethink their stress response as helpful. That pounding heart is preparing you for action. If you're breathing faster, it's no problem. It's getting more oxygen to your brain. And participants who learned to view the stress response as helpful for their performance, well, they were less stressed out, less anxious, more confident. But the most fascinating finding to me was how their physical stress response changed. Now, in a typical stress response, your heart rate goes up and your blood vessels constrict like this. And this is one of the reasons that chronic stress is sometimes associated with cardiovascular disease. It's not really healthy to be in this state all the time. But in the study, when participants viewed their stress response as helpful, their blood vessels stayed relaxed like this. Their heart was still pounding, but this is a much healthier cardiovascular profile. It actually looks a lot like what happens in moments of joy and courage. Over a lifetime of stressful experiences, this one biological change could be the difference between a stress-induced heart attack at age 50 and living well into your 90s. And this is really what the new science of stress reveals, that how you think about stress matters. So my goal as a health psychologist has changed. I no longer want to get rid of your stress. I want to make you better at stress. And we just did a little intervention. If you raised your hand and said you'd had a lot of stress in the last year, we could have saved your life. Because hopefully the next time your heart is pounding from stress, you're going to remember this talk, and you're going to think to yourself, this is my body helping me rise to this challenge. And when you view stress in that way, your body believes you, and your stress response becomes healthier. Now, I said I have over a decade of demonizing stress to redeem myself from. So we are going to do one more intervention. I want to tell you about one of the most underappreciated aspects of the stress response. And the idea is this: stress makes you social.
Okay. Wonderful. So I would encourage you to go back for the second half of this TED Talk because it's even better than what we just watched. But because of time, we want to focus on what we just heard. So I'm curious what you would say. How would this apply to your life? So feel free to put that in the comment. How would you apply what she was just talking about for your life, for your own experience with stress and anxiety? Because I think she makes it sound very simple, right? She says, the next time you are stressed, just think to yourself, this is my body giving me the energy. You know, this TED Talk now has been watched 14 million times. Do I believe that now 14 million people are doing what she's talking about? No. And there's a reason for that. It's actually much, much, much harder than she makes it sound. And the reason is that what happens under stress and anxiety is that we go into an unconscious reflex. And so I want to show you the process that is happening in our brain, in our nervous system, when we go into stress and anxiety. Okay? So when we are in a situation of overwhelm, what happens in your body? Well, there's a high intensity being kicked up in your body in that moment. And, you know, I asked in classes in schools, I asked people, would you call this energy, the intensity, would you call it good energy or bad energy? And most people would say bad energy. Now, then I ask people, do you remember the guy that was attacked by a mountain lion in northern Colorado, like about 1.5 years ago? So imagine that, right? Here is this person jumped on by a mountain lion. What happens in his body? The same process, right? Very intense energy within a split second being kicked up. Would you call the energy in his body good energy or bad energy? Well, most people would say good energy because it is our survival energy. And in the case when this person was attacked by a mountain lion, of course, this energy is very, very good because it prepared him to do exactly what he needed to save his life, which is physically fighting off the mountain lion. So the problem with the survival energy that to this day is getting kicked up in our body in situations of stress and overwhelm is that this energy was not designed for this world. This energy was designed over the course of 2 million years since the Stone Age. So the way our brain and nervous system works is completely Stone Age design. So what was the energy designed to do in the Stone Age? Well, it was designed to physically fight off a mountain lion or to run away physically. And so I saw an interview with the guy who was attacked 2 days later in the news, and he was all scratched up. But you know what? He was probably the happiest person I've ever seen because he had used up all of his energy and he was very happy and relaxed. So, what happens to you when you or your child, when you go into a situation of overwhelm, all of this primitive energy gets kicked up in your body, and you're not using it to fight off a mountain lion, you're not using it to run away. What happens to it? It all gets stuck in what we call the freeze response. So why do we go into the freeze response? Well, in the Stone Age, they studied that specifically in prey animals, because actually our emotional part of the brain has the same design as that of a prey animal in the wild. So people have asked the question, prey animals in the wild are constantly traumatized. They're constantly attacked. Why don't they have PTSD? Isn't that a great question? Well, the reason they don't have PTSD is because they go, if they cannot fight, if they cannot run, they go into the freeze response, which is they play dead. And do you know why a prey animal would play dead? Well, it's because the predator animal has also an instinct, which is to not eat dead, rotting, sick meat. So playing dead is the best other option after if you cannot fight, if you cannot run. And so to this day, did you know that we have an anxiety epidemic because we're still going into the freeze response? So imagine, how does that feel if this superhuman energy, by the way, have you heard that when there's an accident and a child is under the car, the mom is like lifting up the car? The energy that gets kicked up inside of us in situations of threat or overwhelm is superhuman energy. And so imagine what it feels like when we hold this superhuman energy inside, in our body, stuck. What kind of symptoms do you think that creates?
Bonnie, this is a great segue into our next question.
Perfect.
So this person asks, why can stress and anxiety cause tiredness and low energy, but also restlessness at the same time? Follow up, how do I use these contrasting feelings to my advantage?
That is exactly perfect timing. Perfect timing. I show you exactly how. Because it's paradox, right? And people have a hard time with understanding that. Well, the reason, so the first symptom that this frozen, stuck superhuman energy, how it feels like, is what we call stress. And then if it gets a little bit more intense, we call it anxiety. Can you see that? It's a lot of intensity, a lot of pressure inside, and on the outside, you're not moving. People lay on the couch and they're like, why can't I get myself to the gym? Well, I tell you why, because your brain is in a freeze response and basically tells you, don't move. Yeah? Now, you need superhuman energy to hold in the superhuman energy. How do you think that's going to feel over time? When your body's energy is literally stuck in a freeze response like that. Well, you can imagine, right, that over time feels exhausting. And that is where people wake up in the morning and they're too tired to get up. And probably pretty soon, this person will call this depression. So there are now the first articles being published that anxiety and depression are not a mental health disorder that somebody is born with or a chemical imbalance that somebody is born with, but that it is a sign of the freeze response. So does that make sense why somebody would feel restless and exhausted at the same time? And you know what? I don't think you're alone. I think that is where a lot of people are stuck right now. Now, think about it. What other symptoms do you think this could create? Over time, this will cause physical problems, right? That starts causing health problems. And what do people do when they feel like that? Let's say people come home at the end of the day and they feel like that. What do people do? Yeah, you're right. They want to be here, right? They want to be relaxed. And so what do people do? They go to the fridge and they open a beer or they open a bottle of wine. Now, would alcohol get a person actually into this place? No, because it is not releasing this energy. So what substances like alcohol, marijuana, or other drugs do is they give people a little vacation to get away from this. But really, when the chemical wears off, people are actually in a more tense place. So you see what that sets up, right? Then people want to do it again and again. And we know now that oftentimes when people have very serious substance use issues or addiction issues, they often have unprocessed trauma underneath. So we know now that there's a connection between the two. So then the question is, from our beautiful participant, how do I tap into this energy? Because you can see here, this energy is not bad energy. This energy is actually your most precious life force that is trapped. So we in Natural Highs, we developed a technique how you can release and liberate this energy. And if you're up for it, we can show it to you right now. Okay? Super. And when I'm going to show you how this exercise works, it is totally up to you to what level you want to participate. You can do it on the level of stress. You can do it on the level of anxiety. It's completely up to you. If you feel like right now is not the right time, you can also learn how it works. And then we also will link a recording to this exercise for you that you can use in the future. Because when we had to go through COVID and so much stress for so many people, we actually made a recording of this practice so that people who deal, first responders, teachers, parents, that you would have this technique available to use, okay? So participate exactly to the level that feels right to you right now. All right, so take a big breath and a big stretch. And then you can bring your attention inward. And you can either close your eyes or you can leave your eyes open, whatever works for you. And you can do a body check-in, and you can notice where in my body is this trapped energy? Where do I feel it? Some people feel it in their chest. Some people feel it in their stomach. Some people feel it in their shoulders. You might feel it lots of places, but for right now, just pick one place where you feel it in the most tangible way. And when you have the location in your body, make it even more tangible. So you can ask yourself, if I would have to give this feeling a color, what color would I pick? Is it rather red or black or blue? What color would you pick for it? And it doesn't have to be perfect. And then you can ask yourself, if this pressure would have a shape or a texture, what is it actually like? Is it pokey? Is it staticky? Is it heavy? Just see what it feels like to you. Now, when you feel this pressure or this intensity, I can predict to you what the rest of your body is doing with it. My sense is that the rest of your body is constricting around it, is tense around it. And do you know why I know that? Because that is the freeze response. This is your most precious life force being kicked up to help you, and the rest of your body is going, ugh, I'm going to have to hold this in. So the next step you can do is you can teach your brain that what is held in here with tension is not your enemy, is not a problem. It's actually your best life force that got kicked up to help you. So notice what happens to it when you let your brain befriend this. When you let your brain understand, oh, this is not a problem. This is actually my best energy that I would like to have back. Just see what happens to it. And then you can imagine that within this container, there's 2 channels coming out with 2 valves on it. And in a very slow and gentle and measured way, you can open up the valves so that your beautiful life force can come back into your body. And you can decide how slow you want to open these valves. And in a very slow and measured way, you can let your life force flow back into your body. And you watch what happens to the energy when it is allowed to move. It might change its color. It might change its quality. Just check that out. How does it feel when you let it move? And if you could let this energy move in whatever way you want, where would you channel it? And you know what? Sometimes people say, this is so much, like I don't even want to keep it inside my body. You are totally allowed to let it flow out of your fingertips. And whatever you want to keep inside, you can channel it in your body. You can spread it out in your body so that you have your energy back. And if you could channel this energy, if you could do with this energy whatever you want, how would you use it? You know, some people say, I would take a walk with it. Some people say, I would exercise with it. Some people say, I would clean the house with it. Some people say, I would do my emails with it. You can do with it whatever you want because it's yours. So let yourself imagine that you can tap into this energy and you can move it. And you can channel it in whatever direction you want. And in that moment, take your brain by the hand and show your brain that it is totally safe to get out of the freeze response. See, our brain doesn't know that. The Stone Age part of our brain doesn't know that. It thinks, oh my God, if I'm going to get out of the freeze response, I'm going to get eaten. So you show your brain, specifically the brain stem, that is our Stone Agey brain, our reptilian brain, you show it that it's perfectly safe to get out of the freeze response. Now, what I just showed you, it sounds very simple, but it's not easy to do because you are overriding a 2 million-year-old reflex in your own brain. So if you want to use this in your life, if you want to practice it, you're going to have to practice it almost like playing a really challenging musical instrument. So what really helps with that is because next time you get under stress, the same old pattern will happen, right? Your body will kick up all this beautiful energy. You will go into the freeze response. So what helps in that moment is to have a reminder, either a color or an image that would remind you, oh, I don't need to do that. I don't need to constrict this. I can let my energy move. It is completely safe to liberate this energy and bring it back to me. So make sure you have a color or an image before you come back. And if you could do this, if you could move your energy out of the freeze response, how much would you rate? How would you rate your experience with stress and anxiety? -5, I hate it. +5, I love it. Just see if you would rate it in a different way. Okay. All right. Then you can take a big breath and a big stretch and come back. Awesome. So I would love to hear what your experience was, if you could do this, and what you noticed. So feel free to put your comments in the chat. We would love to hear if you could make it work, how you made it work. Now, I also want to say, right, if somebody has very intense anxiety or like almost like going into panic attacks, what we teach students now is that sometimes when it's very intense, it's very hard to do this sitting by yourself. it is very, very helpful if you have somebody that you can actually push against and push the energy out. Or if you can go to a wall and push against the wall and let the energy move in the Stone Age channels that it was designed for, through your arms and through your legs. So just know that. We teach that as kind of like a first aid, anxiety or panic attack intervention. That is super helpful. And we are teaching this to families with little kids because little kids love that, right? They love pushing against their parents, especially if their parents let them win. And so you help your children really moving this intense physical energy with stress and anxiety. So just want to make sure that you know these different versions of this exercise. Okay.
So I just want to offer that someone shared they noticed that assigning an image to their anxiety immediately made their body relax.
I tell you why that is. I'm so glad you found the trick. Our brainstem, our Stone Age part of the brain, also called reptilian brain or lizard brain, does not work with words. It is so Stone Agey. It does not work with words. It works with colors and images. This is why when people, feel tense and stressed and they say, just relax. Have you noticed that that does not work? The moment you see it as a color and a tangible location and an image, it immediately responds because you're speaking the right language. So I'm so glad you noticed that. That's great.
And then someone else asked, and I think you mentioned how often to practice. Someone said, how frequently do you recommend practicing this, but just over and over and over?
The best way I can describe it is like you're picking up a really difficult musical instrument like a violin. You're not going to expect yourself to just go on stage and play the violin, right? You're going to pick it out every single day and you're going to practice. And in the beginning, it's not going to sound very good. It is the same way with your nervous system. This is a very strong habit in our nervous system that I would say the more often you catch yourself and you can work with the color and the image, the better you're going to get at that. And the most important trick with that is to understand that stress and anxiety is not your enemy. That this energy is literally your body's best energy that you want to befriend. And so, like I said, we made a recording of this exercise. We will link the link to this recording where you can get it for free because we want people to know about it and to know how to do it and to know how to teach it to others. So you have our full permission to teach it to anybody who you know has a hard time with stress and anxiety. We also will link handouts for you that have tons of resources. So there's a whole list of neuroscience and nervous system-based strategies where you can literally help your body move from the stress mode, from the sympathetic nervous system state, which is really being stuck here, to what we call the parasympathetic nervous system state, which is the state right here. And so there's lots and lots of physical strategies that work for that. So you're going to get handouts with lots of these ideas. So another resource that we are working with in Natural Highs are herbs. There are lots of herbs that are healthy and non-addictive that also help your nervous system to move from the freeze response, from the sympathetic stress state into the parasympathetic state where you can relax. And obviously, we're not giving medical advice here. Obviously, you want to check with your medical provider. But in terms of a resource, there are really powerful, healthy, non-addictive herbs available. And we here in our community, we have two phenomenal resources for that. We have two herbal apothecaries, Rebecca's Apothecary in Boulder and the Little Herbal Apothecary in Lafayette, where everybody who works there is a trained herbalist who can advise you what herbs would be really beneficial for stress and anxiety, and even herbs for trauma symptoms. So in our handouts, you can have a list of herbs. And again, we recommend that you check with your medical provider and see if these could be resources. So here you have Rebecca's Apothecary's address, the Little Herbal Apothecary's address, and also the name of the TED Talk for you to find again. And here is the free process that I just showed you. It is a brain spotting audio. So brain spotting is a new form of trauma treatment that came out of EMDR. And it is a very powerful treatment to actually help people get out of the freeze response. So not just cope with it forever, but to actually resolve it. So, but you can access this audio for free on our website. And then if you're nerdy and geeky and you want to know more about the neuroscience behind why depression and anxiety most likely is actually a freeze response in somebody, we posted the articles here for you where you can dive deeper. And then, just like Jennifer said, we are providing AccuDetox, AccuWellness. So this is a 5-point ear protocol, ear acupuncture protocol. So it is working with acupuncture needles, and it also helps the body move from the sympathetic nervous system into the parasympathetic nervous system state. So, sometimes people are too exhausted to even do what we just did. And the wonderful thing about this 5-needle ear acupuncture protocol is that the needles do it for you. So we started offering free AccuDetox, AccuWellness here in the community the day after the King Soopers shooting. And we have seen so many powerful, positive benefits on the mental health side, but also alternatives to substance use, that we have not stopped. And we are now offering it in 5 locations a week, all over Boulder County. So we have created a hub, and our website is boulderacudetox.org, and you will find a link in our handouts because we want you to try it. A lot of people get relief from stress, from anxiety, from cravings, both for substances or food. It helps people with pain management. It can help with sleep. It is still used in addiction treatment centers, but now it's actually mostly used after disasters and after acute trauma. So because we had so much trauma in our community, we will keep offering it. And so just know that boulderacudetox.org is our hub, and you will always find all the locations and times on there.
Perfect. Thank you. We've got a couple questions.
Perfect.
So the first one asks, why does connection help to get you into parasympathetic state?
Perfect. I am so glad you asked that question. So think about the Stone Age, right? So here you have a situation in the Stone Age. Somebody was attacked by a wild animal, and that wild animal maybe even injured them, and they barely made it home to the tribe. And they're sitting around the fire with the safety of their tribe, and that's where their nervous system goes into parasympathetic. Do you see that? So connection helps get people into the parasympathetic state. And if you are curious about what connection does, specifically in the context of stress and anxiety and trauma, you have to go back to the second half of the TED Talk, because Kelly McGonigal talks about that stress releases oxytocin. Now, oxytocin is not known as a stress hormone. Oxytocin is known as the love hormone, the cuddle hormone, the bonding hormone. Now, why do you think nature would release a lot of oxytocin after stress and trauma? Yeah, you guessed it right, because in the Stone Age, right, connection was everything in terms of safety and survival. And to this day, stress releases a hormone inside of us that we actually find connection. So when I talk with parents about that, I say, be careful what you do in your family during times of stress, because you can help your children and yourself bond and connect with healthy things. Because if you use unhealthy coping mechanisms during stress, you will bond to them quicker because you will release oxytocin, right? So the time of stress and trauma are actually times where we really should connect to the right resource, to people, to safety, to healthy coping mechanisms. That is a really important thing. Yes, thank you so much for that question.
That's beautiful. And we steal the Pillar program. We steal a lot from that idea and from how Johann Hari articulated it at that the opposite of addiction is connection and finding your support system. And then we've got one more question in about 4 minutes to answer it, just because I have a little bit of housekeeping to wrap up. But this person says, my mind is overworking itself so much sometimes that I don't know if I could take hold of a color or image.
Yeah.
What would I do instead? Or do I calm down enough to choose a color or an image? Like, how do they get there?
I am so glad you asked that question because I forgot to say something, okay? And you reminded me. This energy is not mental energy. Do you see that? It is all physical Stone Age survival energy to either fight physically or run away physically, okay? Now, we modern people, we don't know that. So what do? We feel all this intense energy and we don't know that this is in our body. So what do? We try to fix it in our head. Have you noticed that? And have you noticed that it never works? That is why everybody lays awake at night trying to fix the stress in our mind. It will never work because it is not mental energy. So if you notice yourself overthinking, what I would recommend to do is you take a deep breath and a big stretch. You do a body check-in and you ask yourself, where is this pressure in my body? Because before you go into overthinking, it originated in your body. So in a very gentle way, you take yourself to your body, and that's where you can work with the color and the image. I'm so glad you asked that, because I'm sure you're not the only one who tries to fix it mentally, right? We all try to do that.
No, that was perfect. And I think that's a really nice way to wrap up with that tool. And I can't thank you enough, Avani. This is, I think, the third time I've seen this presentation, and I learned something new every single time from it. So I'm very appreciative that you do this and all these fabulous people involved with Natural Highs. You can't see us off to the side, but we're all smiling and shaking our heads. And the gratitude I have for you all and the work that you're doing in the community is overwhelming.
And can I say one more thing? So,
Yeah.
because everybody, you can be part of our community. We love people to be part of our community. So the way to do that is you go to our website, naturalhighs.org with an S, and you can sign up with your email so you get all of our resources sent into your inbox. So for example, we offer a monthly bilingual free presentation just like this on cutting edge topics on mental health and alternatives to substance use. So if you like the presentation today and the style how we're working, you are so welcome to be part of it, to come and connect with us. So we would love to have you in our community.
Fantastic. I'm going to actually pop back over and just say a few more things. Once again, thank you to Avani and our volunteers from Natural Highs, and to all of you for tuning in. And thank you for your questions and engaging tonight. I hope you got as much out of this as, I did, but that this really did help to bring more awareness and understanding to mental health and why someone's behaviors are taking place and what's going on in their brain when those things are happening. Also, too, I want to shout out beautiful Stone Cottage Studios. I'm so excited to be back again for another year. Thank you guys so much for having us back. BCH for supporting these kinds of discussions and lectures. And then last but not least, our funders, the city of Boulder, the folks that help make this possible. We couldn't do it without you. I couldn't do this without any of you all. So a lot of gratitude right now. I'm feeling very mushy. And one little request, if you're watching this live or if you're watching the recording, either way, you can access the feedback survey. The link is either up top or right below your window. Shouldn't take more than about 4 minutes, and we love to hear from you. We want to know how we did. We want to know what you want to hear about. Give us ideas for topics. We're open books. There's a lot of people doing amazing work in the community that can come sit in and be our experts. And then this just helps to show our funders that we are spending the money on what we said we would and that we're being effective with it. So again, thank you all. Thank you, ma'am, so
Thank you.
much. And we'll see you all next time.